and welcome to this live reading from Solstice Shadows, a VanOps thriller by Avanti Centrae, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue, Maldives Archipelago, December 15, 1:46 p.m. Maldives time. The golden forks of lightning that raged over the bruised sea reminded Ravi of a thunder-imbued romp with his Russian mistress on her four-poster bed. After their love-making, they had thrown wide the bedroom's snowy white French doors and watched the electric skies as they cooled off. Lost in the recollection, the hard kick to his thigh came as a shock. He toppled sideways onto the cold sand, the memory forgotten. "Ambassador Singh, sit up and put your hands behind your back." Guttural and accented, it was the voice of a stranger. Ravi had thought he was alone in the aquamarine cove guarded by his expensive travel guide and the towering walls of seaweed-encrusted rock. He pushed himself to a sitting position on his beach towel and crossed his legs, suddenly feeling cold in his swimsuit. He glanced around. Dark thundercat clouds obscured the sun, violent wind whipped his short black hair, and the surf angrily pounded the beach. The guide who brought him to this remote island was lying face down 50 meters away, unmoving. Ravi bit his lower lip. A man wearing a black executioner's hood moved from behind Ravi and stood between him and the tortured sea, hands on hips. Rough white rope was coiled in the man's left hand, and a length of flexible wire was attached to two wooden handles in the man's right. Ravi recognized the wire device as a garrote traditionally used for assassinations. Ravi's stomach clenched, hard. Bile rose in his throat. Ravi swallowed the bitter acid. "What do you want?" The man whipped the wire of the garrote around the back of Ravi's shoulders. It stung like the bites of a million fire ants. Ravi screamed. "Shut up, we're alone here. Put your hands behind your back and do it now." If he complied, Ravi knew he was doomed. He tried to get upright and lunge at the man, but his beach towel and the soft wet sand pulled at his legs, telegraphing his intention. The man laughed and kicked Ravi in the side of his chest. Something snapped, a rib, and he landed on his back. For a moment, his world was starred kaleidoscope of suffering. This can be quick or extremely slow and painful. Your choice. My recommendation is to roll over and put your hands behind your back. Defeated, Ravi complied, earning him another searing jolt from his rib. A distant part of him wondered where the man was from. Not India, not with that accent. A cold, light rain began to fall. The man kneeled on Ravi's back and wrapped the rope tight around his wrists, binding them together like one of the creatures he'd come here to aid. A few years ago, he'd spent time with a local conservation organization helping endangered turtles recover from getting entangled in ghost fishing gear, and had so enjoyed the trip that he planned another while he was here in the Maldives on business anyway. It wasn't working out as imagined. "Bend your knees." Ravi did as he was told, and the attacker jerked him upright, forcing Ravi's buttocks onto his heels. The man walked around Ravi and stood in front of him again, legs wide. Ravi studied the man's hood to take his mind off the pain. There were only endless black holes at the eyes and no mouth cut out. Unfortunately, the distraction didn't work to reduce the agony parading across his rib and shoulders. Tears fell down Ravi's cheeks, obscured by the rain. "Good. Now we talk. I know you're having an affair with Russian Ambassador Zola Organs. Tell me what she has told you about Maddie Marshall and the star chart." That's what the man wanted to know? He and Zola had mostly talked about their common goal of a lightning-fast quantum computer with only a tangential mention of the star chart. Apparently, though, the information was deadly. "I know little. The information is useless," Ravi rasped. I'll be the judge of that. Tell me now." Another golden bolt of lightning sizzled across the eggplant-colored sky, and a gull shrieked at a plaintive cry. Suspecting he was about to die, Ravi visualized the kind eyes of his now gray-haired wife, the broad smiles of his 3 children, his 2 beautiful and accomplished nieces, and regretted the infidelity with the Russian. When the thunder boomed again, his heart fractured into 1,000 shards of remorse. In futility, Ravi screamed a second time, and the tattooed man struck anew with the metal whip. The man growled. "Talk to me. What did she tell you?" But before he told the man everything, Ravi sent up a mental prayer flag to Shiva. He asked for either a miracle of deliverance or a quick and merciful death. Chapter 1. San Francisco, California, December 18, 3:51 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Maddie cracked her loft's front door, peered through it, and felt the hair on the back of her neck stand at attention like rows of tiny soldiers about to do battle. There's someone in there. She pulled the entry door almost closed and put a finger to her lips to silence AJ and Vincent, who lingered behind her in the complex's dim, soundless hallway. AJ's 10-year-old eyes grew wide and her ex raised a brown eyebrow, but they both went still. Heart pounding strong and steady, every sense alert, she willed her breath to deepen so she would be ready for whatever came next. She inched the door back open. Caution had become her friend in the last year and a half. The pencil-thin beam of light she'd seen 2 heartbeats ago flickered off in her bedroom and pitch-black darkness descended. Although she had closed the living room patio door when she'd left to teach at the Aikido dojo, it was ajar, and damp air filled the loft. The city skyline glittered through the windows, showing off the San Francisco Giants baseball stadium, lit like a gargantuan ornament in festive reds and greens. The air smelled of the frigid rain that drowned the night. Her roommate had texted an hour ago that he was working late, so who was in there? What did they want? There, what was that sound? Something like the scrape of a boot on her hardwood floor. She listened and squinted in the gloom. For the briefest moment, crimson light from the stadium's Christmas decorations glinted off a metal object in the bedroom doorway. A gun. That was all the warning she needed. Maddie yanked the door shut just as the bullet splintered the jamb where her knee had been. Run! With both arms, she pushed AJ and Vincent away from the exploding shrapnel, sending all 3 of them sprinting down the shadowed hallway and careening around the corner. Vincent threw his umbrella behind them, and it was clattered on the tile. 10 feet ahead, the red exit sign heralded the stairwell. A shot hit the wall just behind Maddie, knocking a chunk off a glossy Golden Gate wall mural. She cringed. She liked that mural. Vincent pulled up short, and she nearly ran into his tall frame. He strained to pull a gun from his left armpit holster, turned back, and shot once around the corner. Frowning, Maddie put her hand on the top of the gun. "Put that away," she whispered. "It'll make things worse." Vincent answered in the cultured voice she used to find sexy. "Head downstairs." The index finger of her left hand twitched, and she balled both hands into fists. "No, I'll wait inside the stairwell to disarm him." "No, go. I'll join you in a minute." Angry at him for not trusting her Aikido skills and escalating the situation, Maddie pressed AJ toward the stairwell, all the while thinking that more assailants could arrive from downstairs. She bent over and whispered, "Run upstairs to the roof and hide." His freckled face, framed by big jug ears and perpetually messy red hair, looked up at her. He used to be a foster child from the dojo, but she thought of him as hers now and wanted the adoption paperwork to be official, yesterday. What if she died today? Love for him poured through her heart as he nodded, fear and determination in his eyes. As the sound of Vincent's next shot echoed down the hallway, she reached around AJ and opened the metal stairwell door and ushered him toward the wet and muddy linoleum landing. His small feet made no sound as he padded up the stairs. Guessing that what she'd hidden in her loft had placed him in danger, her heart overflowed with guilt. But who knew it was there? She reached for her phone and dialed the police. Chapter 2, 3:54 p.m. Rounding the corner of the stairwell, AJ paused to look back. Through a rectangular glass pane in the door, Maddie looked at him with wide green eyes full of love. In the black jacket, cabbie hat, and blue jeans she typically wore after changing out of her gi, she looked fierce, as though she'd personally block anyone from hurting him. With a phone to her ear, she pointed up the stairs and mouthed, "Go." Another gunshot boomed through the hall, and AJ used it like a sprinter's darting gun, panting as he raced up the 4 flights of stairs to the rooftop patio. Hide. But where? Two metal patio tables with 4 chairs stood to his right, wet from the falling rain. In front of him was the city's bright skyscape. To his left, the top landing of the wrought iron fire escape looked like prison bars. Shivering from the cold, he moved around the back of the tall structure that enclosed the door. The area was dark and scary, but it might be a spot to hide if he could overcome his fear of the dark and make himself explore it. He hated the dark. But as his eyes adjusted and the shaking subsided, he realized there was no good hiding place back there, only large metal boxes that he guessed housed some sort of heating equipment. Afraid to make a sound, he tiptoed around the entire rooftop, avoiding shiny black puddles the best he could. A loud sound blasted through the chill night air. Another gunshot? What if Maddie was shot? She was always kind to him ever since he started taking classes at her dojo. His foster parents were nice, but they had 5 other kids at the house. He didn't get a lot of their attention. But Maddie had wanted to take him to ride roller coasters on his birthday and was trying to adopt him. She was as good a teacher as the sensei who owned the dojo, and she often came to his rescue during his nightmares. He walked back to the fire escape and looked down. A couple of flights below, there was a 2-person patio table perched on the landing. It blocked the exit down, but at the moment he didn't care. The table was draped with waterproof tablecloth, which meant it would provide better cover than the larger ones up here. The fire escape gate creaked as he opened it and scurried down the stairs. Reaching the table, he ducked beneath it. At least it wasn't dark. With his back to the railing, he pulled his soggy knees to his chest and tried to quiet his breathing. He quivered with fear for Maddie, for himself. Could he do anything to help her? What would he do if Maddie were killed? He lived for the dojo on nights like tonight when they were supposed to eat popcorn and watch a movie while cuddled up on the couch in her loft. Yes, that was a better thought. Popcorn, with his big dog Damien curled up at their feet, chewing on a bone while they laughed at the TV. Maddie's broad-shouldered boyfriend Bear would be there too, one strong hand on Maddie's arm, protecting them both. Eyes closed, fantasy playing through his mind, he could almost shut out the sound of gunfire and distant sirens. He'd be safe here from eyes above, but as his fingers caressed the grate beneath him, he realized he was still vulnerable from below. Chapter 3. 3:56 p.m. Back to crouching behind Vincent in the dark hallway, Maddie hoped AJ had found a good place to hide out of the rain. How long would it take the police to arrive? What did the intruder want? The apartment held 2 priceless items hidden in separate places. Vincent held a black semi-automatic in both hands and looked around the corner, ready to shoot. She'd long ago figured out the weapon was purchased to impress her, and despite her objections had even gone to the warehouse range with him twice for target practice. After getting over the gun's rough kickback, she'd become a decent shot, but he didn't understand that her life was about non-violence. Guilty nightmares about the men she'd killed 16 months ago still plagued her. Perhaps she and Vincent were no longer together because he just didn't get her. As he took another shot at the attacker, Maddie tensed in frustration. If the invader would just get close enough, she'd disarm him with a Aikido. Or should they run for it? No, that could mean disaster. She tugged Vincent's arm. Come back to the stairs. He glanced at her, his light brown eyes hard to read. Okay, we only have 3 rounds left. Go, be ready for me. Gunshots ricocheted down the hallway as she ran back to the stairwell, making her ears ring and taking out a wall sconce. The area, already dim in the winter evening light, darkened to a tomb-like gloom. Now! Vincent yelled, and then tore down the hall, rushing with remarkable speed through the door she was holding open. But when his front foot hit the wet landing, he slipped, fell hard on his ankle, and, like a log in rapids, rolled down the stairs to the next landing, where his head hit the wall with a loud thwack and his eyes closed. The pistol dropped from his hand. A break in his lower leg was obvious through the blue jeans. Maddie winced in commiseration at his pain. With Vincent now vulnerable, Maddie's plan to lure the attacker into the stairwell was no longer a good option. Time for a new approach, but only 2 bullets left. In one leap, Maddie jumped down all 6 stairs. She grabbed the pistol and took the stairs back up 3 at a time. She didn't dare look back at Vincent, but sent a hurried wish that he was alive. Motionless, she crouched next to the metal stairwell door. She listened. After 30 seconds of no sound, she opened it just enough to peek into the hallway with one eye. Empty. He must have stopped at the corner. The mild tremor that had developed of late in her left index finger distracted her with his rhythmic movement. To stop it, she modified her grip on the gun to a 2-hand hold and shouldered the door open wide enough to get the barrel through the gap. The wall mural held no moving shadows. She waited. All her training was about redirecting an opponent's energy to neutralize an attack without harming anyone. It was difficult when the assailant carried a firearm, but not impossible if you could entice the attacker to close range. The modern weapon made her feel uncomfortable. But since Vincent had prevented a close-range scuffle, she was going to have to use the dreaded thing in her hands. Sirens sounded in the distance. Not close enough yet. If she had to fight, there was another weapon she'd rather have that didn't rely on bullets. 16 months ago, she found 2 ancient 7-inch obelisks that she learned to use in self-defense. Only a 3-inch sliver remained hidden inside a running shoe in her closet. Untested and tiny as that ruby-colored shard was, she wanted it and squeezed the pistol in frustration. She thought back to her training with the Order of the Invisible Flame and the techniques she'd learned to put her in a state of enhanced awareness. Edith, one of the Guardians, had told her the skill was taught to United States military combatants, and later she'd discovered it was a specific brainwave pattern that was also used by high-performing individuals like athletes and CEOs. It gave her an advantage in a fight. It was generally called meditation, only she did it with her eyes open. If she really concentrated on the sounds around her, everything slowed down. That's why she referred to it as listening. She silenced her mental chatter to mirror that brain pattern. Her sense heightened. Time seemed to stretch. She was aware of her breath, sirens, lights grew brighter, and she felt full of life. A moment later, shadows danced low on the shiny Golden Gate mural, revealing the shape of her attacker's weapon. A shot exploded down the hallway and grazed her hairline. Gritting her teeth against a sudden flare of pain, she fired at the corner toward the gun to scare him off. Over the ringing in her ears, she heard an exclamation, and a semi-automatic pistol skated across the tile. She imagined she'd hit his hand. Footsteps echoed away from her. She hesitated for an instant and then ran after the assailant, kicking his gun back toward the stairwell. Although that cost her only a second, by the time she reached her loft, she'd escaped via the patio. A blast of icy air hit her in the face. With unusual clarity, she could see individual drops of sleet pelting the braided rug in front of the patio door. Boots clanged on the iron fire escape. Maddie sprang to the balcony and leaned over the edge, gun first, but the frozen rain became heavy snowflakes, obscuring her vision. 2 stories down, she caught a glimpse of a man wearing an army green balaclava slipped over the railing with something in his bloodied hand. She swore. It was the yellow folder that contained her star chart. Had he found the shard, too? The assailant glanced up, but not at her. The man had one eye dark as sin, the other with an iris white as the falling snow. Maddie followed his gaze. AJ was just 2 flights up, covering under a metal patio table. The gunman reached toward his jacket and pulled out a snub-nosed pistol. Maddie fired. The thief ducked, and her shot pinged off the metal railing. The man with the mysterious eyes dropped to the street and disappeared around a corner. Maddie dropped the gun and flew up the fire escape toward AJ, who trembled underneath the table. As she stepped into the landing, he slid out from underneath the cloth and jumped into her arms. She held him like that in the falling snow for a long time while he sobbed. Eventually, he pulled away and wiped his eyes. That man, his voice broke and he sucked in a breath. He was one of my kidnappers.